Welcome everyone to a short update on my AC2 Litre. I had intended to resume coach painting last spring, which gradually got put back until I found myself in autumn 2025. So the plan is now to get the primer and undercoat on the main body shell and rear wings ready to finish next spring. In the previous update I added some filler to a few small areas. Now it was time to give the panelling a light sanding with emery paper, and then cleaned it with POR 15 metal cleaner. Lots of masking off to do, but not as much as you would need with spray painting. I found some uneven areas around the rear windows. That's where I had folded the panels back in after refitting the body shell to the wood frame. I put on some filler off camera. While waiting for it to set, I removed lights and bumper. Then filed the new filler into shape. There were still tiny bits of the old red lead primer trapped in scratches and around panel pins. A few panel edges not quite flattened down. Ready for action. A quick clean with frost panel wipe just seconds before the first paint goes on. First coat of Etch primer. This type of primer dries within a few minutes, Yet this brand levelled out almost like coach paint. I was impressed. I was expecting to have to clean and swap a few brushes, which is why this brush is a bit small. I didn't want to ruin my best brushes, but it turned out I could do the entire job with one brush. I believe it's cellulose-based paint, making the fumes quite bad, so good ventilation is recommended. Then cellulose primers to clean the brushes. Now for the high build undercoat by Tractol. My tin was 2 years old and part used, so it was getting a bit leathery. I thinned it down with white spirit in a paint kettle. These paintbrush combs are really good for getting all the paint out of brushes while cleaning. It also avoids getting it all over your fingers, and they're especially effective on very thick paint like this undercoat. Then I turned my attention to the rear wings. After 2 undercoats I decided to sand it, even though I planned to do a 3rd coat. This gives me a chance to examine every detail for any imperfections. This is where perfectionism in the paintwork is important. Here I'm using a craft knife to remove a dried blob of paint. Contradicting that perfectionism statement, I was frustrated to find several areas where there was a very slight unevenness that I could just feel with my fingers, but I decided to leave these minor issues. I recalled an AC Buckland owner back in the 1980s talking to an AC Owners Club Concours judge. He said that if you filled every imperfection, the entire car would be weighed down with filler. Remember that it is different with aluminium compared to steel. Steel tends to have a memory if you pop a dent back into shape. Aluminium has to be reshaped, and some areas have no access to the back of the panelling, hence the amount of filler used on aluminium cars. Unlike earlier painting of the doors, this time I used sanding sponges along with some water to avoid clogging. These soft sponges make it easy to sand without wearing one's fingertips out. This sponge has 220 grit emery. For difficult details I use pieces of emery paper dry. That makes it easier to see the sanded surface, as water hides it until subsequent cleaning up. Then I cleaned off any leftover paint powder. There were quite a few tiny pits along welds, mostly on the roof. The original paint had filled them without using body filler. They were still visible through these 2 coats of undercoat, so I applied some more undercoat without the thinner to level them off. On this day, 19th of November 2025, it was only about 5 degrees C. Frosty nights are forecast, so I'll take a break from painting until the mild weather returns. Then hopefully do top coats next spring and put together another video on coach painting. Thanks for watching.